Yeah, tell
my Uncle Joe. When he was living, it was my mom and me, my sister, and my brother living in East Islip, wonderful suburb of Long Island, East Islip, New York, and had a nice little house, lived next door to 2 police officers, one on either side of us, one retired, one active. So it was a nice neighborhood. Boomer Esiason lived right down the road. A bunch of kids we used to play on our bikes. And my uncle was living with us for a while. My Uncle Joe. He's, he was a hippie at the time and very into his pot, a connoisseur of marijuana. Right. He got some seeds and planted pot plants in the backyard in these huge garbage pails on our back patio. And he also had a big garden with like cucumbers and tomatoes and everything else in there.
Poppy seeds.
The pot seed. He planted these plants. They got to be about 8 to 12 feet tall. Varying sizes in these huge planters where they were towering over our hedges and everything.
So now the police...
so now we got cops living on either side of us, and they're just poking over the hedges, huge buds growing off the tops of these things. They were giant. And my uncle had told my mother it was a basil oregano hybrid that he was working on. He had, grafted it together, and he was making 80,000 pounds of basil oregano hybrid to sell to fucking Italians somewhere. I don't know what his plan was, but my mother bought the whole thing. My father comes over one weekend to pick us up, the divorced father pickup
Wouldn't
thing.
You need a lab to come up with something amazing like that?
Yeah, exactly. He's grafting basil and oregano in his lab downstairs that constantly smelled of weed. So my father comes over, and he goes out back, and he sees these huge pot plants growing out back. And my mother just hated my father at that point and would not listen to a word he said, just condescending, everything. It was like she hated just to see him to even pick us up. He comes to pick us up and goes, Ro, there's fucking pot plants growing out in your backyard. And she goes, Joey, don't be an asshole. It's basil oregano hybrid.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and my father's just looking at her like, you ass. You dumb ass. Do you realize they could take the kids away and everything? You would be arrested. This whole house would fucking go to jail. Tell your brother to get rid of the fucking pot plants. And all I remember after that was in his apartment, pot plants hanging everywhere, drying as quickly as possible.
Can you just have one weed plant and they just go, hey, dig it up?
No, it's got to be a whole farm, a forest of pot. I don't know. No, if you had one weed plant?
Yeah, if you just took one seed.
You'd get in trouble. You're not allowed to grow it.
I'm just trying to... I'm trying to grow a nickel bag.
You'd have a better argument.
Want to just grow a nickel bag?
You'd have a better argument to say I didn't know I didn't put it there if it was only one plant. But if you have they're in planters and they have a sprinkler system on them.
Oh yeah, he would cultivate this thing. He was amazing. Grew huge pot plants, basil and oregano.
Lots of instant feedback coming in. Sam from FBA, the moment you spank a kid, they think that they can get you arrested. I used to catch hangers, shoes, and even a water hose before. And that leads to the next instant feedback.
Hot Wheels track.
We got Brian from Buffalo. Can you guys play the audio of the angry Boston dad driving his kid home? Remember this?
Oh, yeah.
We haven't played this in a really long time.
Oh, that is vicious.
What's the story? I can't even remember. The father was supposed to pick his kid up from a dance or something. Do you know the backstory, Rock? Yeah, you don't know. I can tell.
The kid taped it, right?
All right.
Yeah, the kid taped it.
There's another part of
My brother used to do that. He had a boombox with dual cassette, and he used to tape my parents' arguments and then put music underneath it.
Are you brilliant?
Dude, it was hilarious. The best one he ever had because the argument fit the way the music was going. You know that Led Zeppelin song, No Quarter?
Yeah.
It starts really slowly with that haunting keyboard. And you just hear my dad going, oh, what the fuck? This is some bullshit. And as he's getting madder and madder, the music is right as he flipped out, Bonham came in with the crash cymbals. It was great. I actually asked him yesterday if he still had that. He said it's somewhere in my parents' house.
Oh, you got to find that. That's hilarious.
I remember the last thing with my uncle. He kind of lived. It wasn't really the basement. It was kind of like one of those split level things. So off the kitchen, it was a few steps down, half a floor down, and that was where he lived. And then we put a door up, or he put a door up, and put this, barely you could see through this frosted glass by this little window that went from the kitchen into his apartment. But there was a gap there that I could peer through and look into his apartment. And he used to have these pot parties, like a bunch of hippies would be down there, big beards, just smoking weed, topless broads and everything like that. But I didn't know if I left the light on in the kitchen and peered through the frosted glass, he'd see my silhouette clear as day peering in. So I left the light on, and I'm looking and watching and watching this party going on, and then out of nowhere, this lump of clay just went right in the hole I was looking at. Just took some clay and like scram, kid.
But who has clay around for that stuff?
They were sculpting, man.
Yeah.
It's the 70s.
It was just so
Everybody had
groovy,
silly
man.
putty.
Good point.